Okay guys, I am changing the regulator on the propane tank. If you see, this is the propane tank underneath your vehicle. That's the front of the vehicle. You just see my stomach, but anyway, here's the propane tank. There's a valve you have to close, which is right here. You have to turn it clockwise all the way to close it, and you also have to turn off the two switches for the propane, one on the outside on the left side of your van and one in the inside. So once you turn this off, and then you find here there would be this box enclosure that has these two bolts that go here, and it's really hard to get from behind with a box wrench. From behind you have to like open it, and the box wrench that I use was a 3/8. That's the one that fits the bolts in the back of the box. In fact, pass me the bracket. This is the one that goes here, and it goes on those two things. Let me see if I can. This will go here, and there's two bolts in there, and that's where the 3/8 go. Now it's really hard to get to those two bolts because in front of this box is the plastic enclosure that's protecting the regulator, and I'll show you that outside once I get a chance. But I'm just for people who want to do this again, close that valve right there, and then come here and remove the two bolts from behind. But also there's bolts below and some plastic push fault bolts that hold down the case. I'll show you this outside of the van so you know what I'm talking about. Okay guys, so like I was showing you, underneath there's a bracket here, and the bracket has these two bolts in there, and they're really hard to get to because on top of this bracket is a plastic cover, a gray plastic cover that also has this in there. You see how close this is in between, and that's why it's hard to get to these two things. And then the cover, this metal bracket is where these four screws go into, and they go like this into those four screws. So that holds the regulator, and on top of all this there's a plastic cover. On top of all this there's a plastic cover over this, and there's some little plastic push, I don't know what these are called, push bolts or something, and they go in here. So the way I was able to get these off was I grabbed my adjustable wrench, I made it thin enough to go through the top, but when I pushed it out it pinched this and allowed it to pop out. And basically that's what you have to do. First I unscrewed these two underneath, so this was a little looser, which gave the plastic box a little looseness so I can get to the back two bolts. Then I used these box wrenches to undo those bolts until they came out, and at the end it was easier to just do it with my finger because this was taking forever. You can barely move in there. Once that plastic box came off, I was able to take it off, and one side is split in half so you can open it, and the other side was not, but you can push it through the tube, through the cable or pipe for the gas. So once you get all this off, you're gonna be putting in, actually this is the new one, this is the old one. If you see the new one, it has a metal bottom grill. The old one had some plastic. When I took off the pipe from here, the gas hose, some gas came out, and it probably took about a minute or two for the gas to stop coming out before I kept working, just for safety. But as long as you turn off the two switches in the van for gas, and you closed off that switch that valve by turning it clockwise all the way, then there's no gas in there other than what was in the hose. So I'm gonna get back in there and put this back on this bracket. First I'm gonna connect the two hoses, then I'm gonna put it back in the bracket. Then I believe the way to go about it is gonna be putting this back in, because it'll be really hard to connect these two if the gray box is in front. And then I'll put the gray box over this and just see how we can mount it all back together. We're back underneath the van. We put out the new regulator. This is the plastic box I was talking about. If you can see, one side is not cut and the other side's cut. And right now I have it down at the end of the pipe. But if you pull it, this will go over like this. We'll go over the regulator, and this part will go into the split part, so it comes out to the other side right there. But first I'm gonna put that bracket on the back of that first, and then I'll see how I can attach all this other stuff. Always when you replace the valves, make sure you put the plumbing tape down here and on the other end. That's the box when you slide it off, and on the other end make sure you put the plumber's tape right there too. Make sure it's nice and tight. This is gonna go back there. That's the valve, the gas tank, and then we'll see. I'll put another video and show you how we ended up. Okay, now we are putting back the bracket that I spoke about. I just tighten it by hand right now. Just wanted to show you how everything went. That's the first part. The other L bracket will go behind this, and we'll attach to those 4 screws. There's 2 there and 2 there, and I'll show you when I do that. Okay, so we've attached the bracket and put it really tight, and we have the other piece, the other bracket on those 4 screws behind it, and this will go in here. But before you do that, you want to put the plastic cover on, which we'll do next. And actually, before we do any of this, I am going to test out that we're not leaking any gas. So what I'll do is I'll get a spray bottle, fill it up with water and some soap, and spray these areas, and then turn everything back on and see what happens. See if there are any air bubbles. Okay, we'll try that next, and then we'll put this cover, we'll slide it back down the pipe or the hose and go over this, and then we'll bring this back up and slide it over, and then tighten the bolts, and then we should be done. Oh, and one other thing, those bolts back there are 3/8 box wrench. That's what we use to put them back on. That's what we use to take them off. And as you can see, when this goes back in there, there's very little room to get to them with the box wrench from here. Okay guys, so we tested for leaks. There's no leaks. We went inside the van, turned on both switches, and turned on our propane stove, and the propane stove worked. So I'm assuming every other part of the propane is working. This is the old keys, and it's kind of difficult to get in and out right now. I actually don't even know how I got it in, to be honest with you, but I need to get it out. There you go. Okay, so this is the cover that makes everything very difficult. We're putting it back on. Again, it's got a split on this side that you can go over. So I believe that's the cover fully on. And Now we just need to get the screws back in there somehow. Not very easy to do, but there. Okay, so now that that's back there, now we just need to grab this. My regulator that I bought seems to be a little bit taller than what was in there, so it's really touching back here on the top. But in any case, I'll get the screws, tighten it here, and then you know, just go put these here. And this wrench for these were a little bigger than 3/8.
It's 7/16.
I think it's 7/16. So we were able to get one of these wrenches to help us do it. So I'll put these two, and then again I'll put those plastic bolts or whatever you want to call them that expand once they go through. All right, guys, thank you. I hope this was helpful. All right.
Got it?
Yep.